Truthfully, the event wouldn't be possible without a large team of people behind it. I initially wanted to go through the names, but too many names to go through, but thank God, of course, without a check, none of this would be possible. We had, of course, the help of the Kosherist and stuff, Rabbi forgive me for leaving out the names, but everyone who's involved, you know who you are. Just to mention, of course, with you, obviously, El Sheva and Leon, who are and, you know, we had also Kayla coming in, and Kayla going down and Yala Valley, really helped out. We also have lots of our foremen, really good job. Thank you for all the people who were manning the door. I know it was a little crazy. Thank you. Of course, we need to thank the President of our union. Thank God that I'm on the board for all the things that we do, so we really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to the Shaare Shalom board, the Adam Museum. Without them and Javier and their staff in this building, we really wouldn't be able to do this. And of course, everyone saw the nice, beautiful decor. Paulette from Party by Paulette, and amazing job. In addition, they also had help of the Anna Team Decor and King Point Flores. Thank you so much. And I always forget, but this time I didn't forget, to thank, of course, my parents, and last but not least, my wife, Alexa. It's not easy, thank God. Without her help, her support, taking care of the kids at home, putting up with me and all the events and programs and stuff that we're doing. It's not easy, I'll tell you that. So thank you. I would appreciate it.
Yeah, Alexa.
Okay. Sorry. Last round of thank yous, and then we'll pass it on. Of course, everyone, knows that we also have one of the event sponsors. And we're just going to read the names quickly, and then we'll jump to the next section. So thank you to our event sponsors, Danielle and Ryan Akavan, Shiro and Oren Akavan, Sharona and Alon Bahari, Ivan Joel Gordian, Samantha and Alex Hajjabad, Oliver Hajjabad, Bailey and Adam McNeely, Megan and Daniel Kamali, Yasmin Emmanuel Carmeli, Natasha and Aaron Kwani, Brittany and George Cordovani, Naomi and Adam Cordovani, Jennifer and Jason Cordovani, Naomi and Mike Levy, Nicole and Dan Marco, Lauren and Ben Marco, Nick Rubini, Regina and David Zion, and Sebastian Dar. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to call up Rabbi Shlomo Farhi to say a few words and share a special surprise of what we're going to have later tonight.
What a night. What an incredible night. Thank you to everyone. Most importantly, thank you to everyone who came out, who trusted us, who paid for the tickets, and to join us tonight. It's an incredible event, and without you in these chairs, we wouldn't have had such an incredible event tonight. And we're just getting started. We just had the food. That was just the beginning. You have an incredible speaker, and you have a dessert in one section afterwards. The present, the surprise that I want to show you is our first ever Kosherist SBM magazine. These will be available at the door when you want to leave. I encourage everyone to take that. What's inside is a list of articles, of guides to kosher restaurants, of so many recipes from our own communities, home chefs, home cooks, and our own homegrown influencers in our community. It's all written and taken apart. There's so many names in this book, and there's so many people that went into making this an incredible publication, and I encourage everyone to take not one, 2 copies on your way out because you're going to want to keep one. You might be asking yourself, I'm sure there's someone in this room who's asking, what is SBM doing in the business of kosher food events? And what is Kosherist for Food Account doing in the business of running a shiur tonight? And why are we co-hosting this event together? The answer is that I'll share with you a quick story. A few years ago, I was on a plane to Paris, and I was talking to a Jew that I just met. And he was telling me, listen, I'd love to keep kosher, and I'd love to keep it more often, but there aren't that many good kosher restaurants in the city. And I said, really? Do you know this one? He said, no. I said, that one? Never heard of it. And one after another, I realized this person wasn't familiar with all the kosher restaurants. And in very many ways, that has become the mission of Kosherist, is to provide people that information, to show people where to go,
Can I ask by starting, first of all, if people can put their phones on silent, if that's all right. If you have to get any phone calls, which I'm sure many of you have much more important things than this going on in your lives, and I would not judge you for it, but if you could please put it on silent so that only you hear how important you are. Okay. Sorry, Mechila. Let's begin. I want to start first of all by saying Hazaku Baruch to all the arrangers of this unbelievable event. I'm scared to start mentioning any names because I think last time I forgot someone and they're frantically trying to tell me the name of the person that I don't know. Like, I'm good at lip reading, but I was probably not going to get a Shurzadeh or something like that from your lip motions. So I'll just say thank you to the two people who contacted me here. Where are you? Who brought me here tonight, who encouraged me to keep coming back, who give me all sorts of ideas what to speak about and then tell me, no, really, just speak about what you want to speak about. It's amazing to work with you, and look at this room. Actually, I wanted to do this if that's okay. Hold on. So I had a conversation with this guy. You know, we come here to Great Neck, myself, Rabbi Hadjioff, Rabbi Abragamov, Rabbi Mizrahi, our rabbis from the city. We come here to teach. So this guy came to me and he said, why are you wasting your time in Great Neck? The Persians don't like to learn Torah. So I told him, I don't have the time to respond to you right now, but I'm just going to message you tomorrow night. So I'm just going to send him this little video. And I don't think I have to say anything else. Shtabach Shemo. Let's begin. I'm glad to see all the familiar faces that have been here many times before. I'm so glad to see my children. They came out. And even my grandson, named after me, Shlomo. Okay. I brought my family members in case no one showed up. I would still have a video to send the guy. Look, they're even bringing kids now. Of course, my dear friends, Tony and Daniela, go way back. And of course, where are you? There they are. The holy, holy, holy Hopkins and Namdar connection. And I'm going on Pesach, I'm going on this trip to Cabo, the religious one. And they sent me the list. And there's like 17 lines that begin with the word Rahmani. So I'm looking at it. I wasn't sure if I was reading a guest list or Selichot. Rahmana, 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 Itkalan, Rahmana. Shtabach Shemo. Okay. Let's begin. Sorry? Fantastic. Ya'ani. The most kept mitzvah in all of the Torah, the most observed Jewish ritual of all of the Torah, no matter what, is the night of the Seder. It's not the easiest night for every Jew to get involved in, but it is the number one thing, more even than Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is incredible to think, right? At the epicenter of this night, the backdrop against which the entirety of the Seder takes place is the story of the Haggadah. And the Haggadah tells a story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of the Jewish people leaving Egypt. But what is remarkable is that while the whole story is about leaving Egypt, there is not even one mention of the name Moshe Rabbeinu. Wild. Why is that? And many answers have been given to this question. I'll give you one more question so that we begin our thoughts tonight. And I want you to think with me. I want you to move through this with me. At the end of the story of the leaving of Egypt, Hashem says to the Jewish people, please, do me a favor. Go to all the Egyptians and ask the Egyptians to give you their gold, their silver. Ask them to give you their Rolexes. Ask them to give you their lalik. Ask them to give you their Birkin bags. I had an education in that this summer. Not personally. No, don't worry. And then the pasuk says something very interesting. You know what it says? Vayiten Amonai, and God gave et chen ha'am, the grace of the people in the eyes of Egypt. He made the Egyptians like the Jews. Now, I just want to give you some context for how weird that pasuk actually is. I want you to imagine one of the Hamas hostage takers gets a knock at the door, and it's Eli Sharabi. I had the merit of having him for Shabbat dinner last week. Imagine Eli Sharabi knocks on the door, and the guy opens the door, and the guy's like, hey! And Sharabi like, hey! That's how weird this is. What does it mean? Vayiten Hashem et chen ha'am. What does it mean that they found favor in the eyes of the Egyptians? You want to give them the Egyptian spoils because you promised Abraham that they would leave Birchush Gadol? Fine, so do that. Force them to give it. Every other part of the 10 plagues, it was forced. There was nothing that happened because the Egyptians wanted to. The Egyptians didn't want to give the Jews clean water. They didn't want to let the Jewish people have, a day off of work. They were forced to have that. So why did God do this at the end of the story? So some of you know me well enough to know that I'm a weird guy. We've spoken about this before. Don't laugh at me. It's only the weird ones that are interesting, right? I'm a strange person. I do things that are maybe a little unconventional. In the Haggadah it says that we talk about the 4 sons, the wise one, the Rasha, the simple one, the one that doesn't know how to ask. And the idea our Chachamim tell us is that every single Jew has a seat at the table. No matter what they've done, they have a seat at the table. And the only condition is that there's someone who's willing to be engaged in some way. Even, by the way, if their engagement comes with a little bit of a sharp, pointy stick. What does this work for you? Even the Rasha has a seat at the table. And the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says that a wise person learns from all men. So I picked a man to help us learn tonight. He's a man some of you may have heard of. He's a man called the Piano Man. In 1973. It's 9 o'clock on a Saturday. The regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. He says, son, can you play me a memory? I'm not really sure how it goes, but it's sad and it's sweet, and I knew it complete when I wore a younger man's clothes. La da da, da 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 da. Just came out on Yaakov Shwekey's new album. Sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody, and you've got us feeling all right. That is the opening of the song. And I bet you're wondering why I'm doing that. Because I do bar mitzvahs on the weekend? No, I don't do bar mitzvahs on the weekend. Oh, it's bad enough as a rabbi that I have to work on Shabbat. But what's interesting about the song is that the song was done in 1973. It was based on the real-life piano man playing in a bar who called himself Bill Martin. Was it? Billy Joel. Well, why was Billy Joel playing in a bar to a bunch of sad people, a bartender who thought he could be an actor, and a waitress who's trying to be a politician, and a real estate developer who doesn't know which way is up and which way is down? Why is he there? And the answer is because in 1972, Billy Joel had made a contract to sign an album, and the album did terribly. And he was trying to get out of his contract. And the record label would not let him play anything under his own name. So while his lawyers were trying to get him out of his contract, he could only play under the name Bill Martin. His full name was Bill, or Billy, Martin Joel. So Bill Martin sings this song based on his own life. All the sad people in the bar that he sees, and every person in the song, he said, is based on a real person. I'm going to skip to the end of the song, and then you'll see, perhaps, why this song resonates with the essence of what the Seder actually is. The end of the song, he kicks it up a notch into a higher key. I don't know if I could hit it, but here we go. And the piano, it sounds like a carnival, and the microphone smells like a beer, and they sit at the bar and put bread in my jar and say, man, what are you doing here? La la la, etc. They wanted to know what he was doing in the bar. The bartender says, it's killing me. I should be an actor. The waitress is practicing politics. Nobody wants to be in that bar. Nobody should be in that bar. Man, what are you doing here? They could tell that this man was not just a piano man called Bill Martin. He was a star. He was a rock star. What was he doing in this dive bar in New York City? And the answer, my friends, is the answer, my friends, is the core principle of what the Haggadah and the Seder is all about. Every single year, no matter who we are, we tell over the story of leaving Egypt. And what is amazing is that the Torah tells us that every person has a mitzvah, not just to remember Egypt. There's a lot of things the Torah asks you to remember. 10 zechirot, in fact. But this one, we're not supposed to remember. We're supposed to tell it like a story. Mitzvah alenu lissaper, kol hamarbe lissaper. Tell the story. What is the story, my friends? The story is not only of the people that were enslaved in Mitzrayim long ago. The story is not only about them. The story of Pesach is about all of us. It's about the fact that when the Jewish people were enslaved in Egypt, they weren't only enslaved to Paro, they were enslaved, they were trapped by the culture that surrounded them. And part of leaving Egypt was not taking the Jews out of Egypt, but taking Egypt out of the Jews. And that proved to be so much harder than taking the Jews out of Egypt. Even in the desert, even once they're free, even at the border of the land of Israel, what do the Jewish people say? Nitena rosh v'nashuva mitzrayma. Let's appoint ahead and let's go back to Egypt. What happened to the Jews? What happened to them, my friends, was not that they had been slaves, but that they had become a people who didn't know who they were. They suffered with something that is so powerful. Our rabbis tell us, in what merit did the Jewish people get taken out of Egypt? The Chachamim explain, in the merit, Sheloshinu et Shemam, they didn't change their names. Sheloshinu et Lishonam, they didn't change their language. They spoke Hebrew. Sheloshinu et Malbusham, they didn't change their levush. My friends, everybody in this room, you have to have a Jewish name. And if you don't have one, which is common in the Persian community, it's common in the Syrian community, it's common in a lot of communities, where we took Arab names, or we took English names, and it's fine to have one also, but you have to have a Jewish name. The name that they call you up to the Torah with. The name that they'll write on your ketubah. The name that ultimately you will be remembered on the stone after 120. Now I know you think maybe this rabbi doesn't know our people. We're not like that. Those are not our names. I saw a couple people giving each other shoves. By the way, I notice everything, so don't do anything you don't want me to notice. I even noticed we parked all the way in the back of the parking lot, and I was just chilling in the car, like finishing up whatever I wanted to say. And as I'm sitting there in the car, I noticed, because it's the back, people happy to leave right as they told people the speech is starting. So I see this guy pull in his car and get away, and he actually went like this. I was like, you go, girl. Sorry, you go, grill. Then I got out of the car, and then I see another guy coming. I don't want to look, because I'm nervous I'm going to make eye contact with the guy. Haven't found him yet. But he was getting into the car right behind me, and right as he walked past, I got out of my car, and we locked eyes. And then I saw him walk around the car and walk back in. I love your Jewish guilt. So I know you think that I don't know you. I'm not from here. In fact, I was once questioned, doubted by a Persian grandma. I met a Persian grandma in Israel. She said, what's your name? I said, Rabbi Shlomo Farhi. She said, where are you a rabbi? I said, in Manhattan. She says, what kind of shul is it? I said, it's a Syrian shul. She said, I can't do the accent well enough. I'm an outsider, so I'm going to think I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it, right? She's like, you're Ashkenaz. I have to say, she said it with such disgust. I was like, and this is why we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. Where are you going, Grandma? I'm going to the Kotel. Okay. I said, no, I'm Syrian, I'm Sephardic. She said to me, possibly one of the funniest things I've ever heard in my life, by a Persian grandma who did not know you, who has no idea who I was 10 seconds ago. I said, I'm Sephardic. She goes, where is your hair? Where is your hair? She expected. The forests of Nottingham. Robin Hood emerging. I'm half Syrian and half Ashkenaz, so between the two, I was never going to look like that. But I am half Syrian, and my community is Syrian, and I have convinced enough people to change, not to change their name, to get a name, to use the name. You see, it's so interesting because if you look in the Torah, you will not find anywhere where it says in the Torah, thou shalt use a Jewish name. You don't find it, right? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that you have to wear Jewish clothing. I didn't know what Jewish clothing was until my daughters explained to me. Jewish clothing is that black shirt from Zara with the gold buttons. Only the women in the room are like, oh, there we go. I see. Okay, I see you. I see you. There's nowhere. Where does it say it in the Torah? It doesn't say. It doesn't say you have to have a Jewish name. It doesn't say you have to have Jewish clothes. It doesn't even say in the Torah that you have to speak Hebrew. Some people say, oh, v'dibar tabam. It's not talking about Hebrew, it's talking about Torah. So what was this concern with shelo shinu et shemam lishonam and levusham? By the way, you know whose job it is to do this? It's the woman's job. And I'll prove it to you in a minute. You know what these three things are about? They're not about a mitzvah. They're about having a Jewish identity. Being a Jewish person first. Being proud of being a Jewish person. Not taking off your kippah. Not hiding your Magen David. That's what these three things talk about. They talk about what it means to be proud to be a Jew. To not be embarrassed or ashamed of the mitzvot that you do, of the things that you do. And when someone tells you, oh, you're getting all religious on me, you say, yes, thank you for noticing. I have a friend, Rabbi Moshe Meirfeld. He was on a packed train in New York City. And someone looks over at him. And he sees his big kippah on his head. And he said, hey, Jew. And everyone in the train turns. And my friend Moshe Meirfeld looks at this guy, this anti-Semite, and he says, nice pants. The guy, he was, what? He was so confused. Nice pants? What kind of comeback is that? So you saw everyone in the train go. He said, nice pants. And my friend Moshe smiled at him and said, you called me a Jew and gave me a compliment. I thought it was only fair to do the same. You know what allowed the Jewish people to leave Egypt? The fact that they weren't Egyptians. What do we need for Geulah from this country? From countries like the UK or France, where they'll take an old woman in her apartment and throw her out the window. Where they'll punch people from my synagogue in the back of the head in the middle of the street. My friends, what is going to save Am Yisrael? Am Yisrael identifying, becoming proud, almost loud and proud, to borrow a phrase, about being Jewish. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I believe that only happens on one condition. You see, the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, they were a people who had no identity. And when you don't know who you are, and you don't believe in yourself, and you don't think you're valuable, and you don't think you're smart, and you don't think you're cool, and you don't think you're popular, and you don't think you're capable, and you don't think you're worthy of love, you know what happens? You outsource your identity to somebody else. You give it to somebody else to tell your story. My friends, the Jewish people had let the Egyptians tell them who they were. They were nobodies. They were slaves. This is where they belonged. This is what they were good for. But my friends, on the night of the Seder, in order to actually be free, we eat matzah and we reject chametz. Chametz is the ego. It's something pretending to be something that it's not. Puffed up, self-important. And matzah is exactly what it is. You know, when you're telling the truth about yourself, you never need to think about your story. You could tell your story immediately, but if you have to concoct an image, it takes time. So matzah is immediate. This is who I am. Come get me. My friends, now we understand something very profound. The Jewish people were desperate to be liked. They needed someone to tell them that they were good, that they were valuable. They couldn't begin their life because they were still slaves. So what did God do? He said, go next door, knock at the door of the Egyptian. Ask him to give you his Rolex. And all of a sudden the Egyptian is looking at this kid and he's like, wow, Shlomi. Here's my Patek Philippe. Here's my Rolex. Wife is throwing a Birkin bag at the G. You guys are the best. My friends, the identity of a person, if you don't declare it, someone else will. I remember speaking at a conference with one of the Israeli ambassadors. And he stood up and he said something very clever. He said, for the longest time, the PR in Israel consisted of effectively some Israeli guys saying, this is not true. Actually, we came in after we was going to. It was very defensive. And he said, you know why that's a problem? He shared that he was once at an Olympic event. And at this Olympic event, a person from Kazakhstan won the award. So, the guy goes up, he takes his place on the winner's block, and they play the music of the country of Kazakhstan. Except that by mistake, they played the national anthem of Kazakhstan by Borat. This is a true story. And the guy is sitting there and he's smirking. This is not my national anthem. You know what the Israeli ambassador said? Nobody knows anything about Kazakhstan. So if anyone tells you anything about Kazakhstan, you believe it. There is no other narrative. My friends, in the Haggadah, we read about this powerful idea of telling over the story to our children, where we come from, who we are. And it's so interesting that you know who needs to be reminded who they are. Not only the children. Afilu kulanu chachamim, kulanu nevonim, kulanu yodim et Torah. The greatest sages in the Jewish people are sitting together. And what do they say to one another? They're telling over the story. And the Pasuk and the Haggadah, says, and even if we know it all, mitzvah alenu l'saper, it is a mitzvah on us to tell over what happened when we left Egypt. Kol hamarbe l'saper mitzvah Mitzrayim, harei ze mishubach. Everyone needs to keep telling a story. Why? My friends, listen to this. This is so beautiful. The difference between remembering something and between creating an identity is found in a story. Now, who knows this? Brands know this. Communities know this. When you tell your children that we came here and we set up the businesses and we built and we were prosperous and we made ourselves houses that everyone's jealous of, this is our success. What is the story of that community? Built into the blood of the children. Big house, big car, beautiful shoes, nice things. That's the story of success. But my friends, that is not the mentality that we are looking for. The Haggadah tells us that when you give others your identity, they'll tell you what it is. You know what the identity of this community is? I got a phone call once from a Persian man from this community. And he asked me to speak to his grandson, who he was a little bit worried about. And he said, please, tell him about his grandfather. I think he said Shiraz. Am I allowed to say that in the shul? Yeah? Okay. I think he said Shiraz. I'm not sure. Listen to what he said. He said, tell him that his grandfather, this is the most beautiful Persian custom I ever heard in my life. Tell me, I don't know if anyone still has this. He said every Saturday night, tell him that his grandfather, when Havdalah would finish, he would close his eyes and he would only open his eyes after Havdalah when he would see the faces of his family. because he would want to start the week with Kiddusha. And one week, his grandfather was still in shul, and he was praying a little too long. And they finished Havdalah, and he found himself alone in the synagogue. He'd heard Havdalah, but now he had to walk home. But what would his eyes see on the way home? So he closed his eyes, and he started walking home without being able to see. Halfway home, he fell into a pit on the side of the road. And the family had no idea where he was. So they walked the road back to shul. And as they walked the road, they see their grandfather, father, whoever it was, in the pit. What are you doing here, Baba? And they pull him out. And Baba June still had his eyes closed until he heard their voices. And he opened his eyes for the first time that Saturday night. This man was not a rabbi. He was a regular Persian man. A regular guy from the community. I need you to understand how great you are as Jews. And maybe other people don't understand, but how amazing this community is. And someone told me, oh, I heard that there's a lot of people in shul on Shabbat. I said, yes, I was here for dance. I was here for the Sheva Berachot, and there was like 2,000 people here, something like that. Right? I was like, oh my gosh, so many people came for your simcha. And they said, no, that's the amount of people that come every week. That's what this community is. But my friends, there's something better than King's Point. How many young men from the community have said to me, Rabbi, you don't know the pressure. It's so hard to come to shul. It's so hard to learn. I have to put aside money. You know how much it costs to buy a house in King's Point? You know what I said to the guy? I don't think he likes me anymore. I said there's something more important than King's Point. The point of being a king. What's special? A king doesn't need to move to a fancy neighborhood. Wherever he lives is the fancy neighborhood. That's who you are. You are more powerful than anything else and anyone else. But we get so taken by people's ideas of what we should do. I remember this phrase that goes, we buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. And how do we do it? We spend money we don't have. So money we don't have to buy things we don't want to impress people we don't like. My friends, how did this happen to us? When my grandfather came here from Germany, he had $4 in his pocket, and they said to him, you know, there are government programs. We could give you this, we could give you that. He said, don't give me anything. I have $4 in my pocket and the freedom to be alive as a Jew. The freedom to be able to make my own parnassah. I'm so blessed. My friends, if you walked in this room tonight, I didn't see anyone in a wheelchair. You're so blessed. If you're not in a hospital with your wife or your children right now, you were so blessed. When did someone capture our brains and tell us what we needed to be? There are Jews in this country who are willing to sell out everything in order to be liked by their non-Jewish friends. Understand it will never be enough. You could sell your country, you could sell your people, you could sell your practices. It will never be enough. You will always be a Jew to them. So my friends, if they hate us anyway, why don't we be the most glorious version of ourselves? God knew that the Jews were weak and that they only would be able to leave if when they asked the Egyptian for those things, the Egyptian says, oh my God, I love you. What have you been doing with your hair? Actually, it's a Chevy wig. You understand? They had to be liked. They needed it. But my friends, when we tell ourselves this story, we stop needing it. The beginning of the Haggadah tells us that we are the children of Avraham HaIvri. And you know what made Abraham different than anybody else? He was called Ivri, a Hebrew. Why was he called Ivri, a Hebrew? Because the whole world stood on one side and he stood on the other. He was able to stand up against anyone and everything, and whatever he believed to be true, that's what he fought for. So my friends, I want to ask you, on the night of the Seder where you're truly free, what would you do if you didn't care at all what somebody else said or thought of you? How would you act? I know some of you are thinking exactly the same as I am now, but I don't know. I think that's baked in pressure. If you were really free. You see, Jews, we have something inside of us. Something different. Something special. The other week, I was sitting in a meeting where someone, a Hasidic man from Monroe, gave his liver, or part of his liver, to a man from our community who he never met, he didn't know, was not religious, was not Hasidic, and he underwent the whole procedure. Happily. He felt lucky to do so. But what blew my mind was the following statistic. They did the surgery in Colombia. In Colombia, there was, guess how many, this year, altruistic liver donations. You know what that means? Not a liver that's given from a list where you waited 10 years or died before you got it. Not a liver that someone gave you if they were your brother or your sister, but a liver given to you by a stranger, altruistically, a donor, by that. How many in the whole year? Anyone want to have a guess? How many? No. 28. 28 liver transplants total. Do you know how many were altruistic liver transplants? Of those 28, 12. So 12 people gave their liver to a complete stranger. Of those 12, how many do you think were Jewish, bearing in mind that we are 0.02% of world's population? 12 of them. Do you? Thank you, I gave away 12 livers. Not sure why you're clapping for me. Closest I came to that was this Shabbat when I had chopped liver. I guess that grandma was right about me. My friends, what made 12 people do something that nobody else did? Nobody. What made that happen? I want you to understand that every person here is built with a counterintuitive. You were built to be alone. Hen am levadad yishkon. You were built to be able to do impossible things. And my question to you, if you are not being impossible, if you are not a superhero, is why? Why are you not being a superhero? Why are you not being extraordinary? The choice to do so is something that you get to make. And by the way, you can make it tonight. You all went and had this beautiful kosher food outside. And now you don't have an answer, there's no good kosher food. I'll give you a longer list, and you can see that gentleman sitting right over there if you want a longer list. My friends, people tell me I'm not keeping kosher because of peer pressure. All my friends don't eat kosher. So what? So what? My friends, you need to tell yourself the story of your grandpa who walked home with his eyes closed, who fell into a pit, and even when he fell in a pit, still didn't open his eyes. That's who you come from. That's your Avraham Avinu. And by the way, every time I come, I get another Persian woman or man telling me about their father or about their grandfather. My only question to you is, if you're going to be extraordinary, why wait Yachol Rosh Chodesh, the whole of the month of Nissan, is about creating impossible things. That's why we make the beracha on the trees. The halacha is the month of Nissan, we make a beracha on the tree. And what beracha do we make? That God made beautiful trees. And not only did he make beautiful trees, he created biriyot tovot, new, beautiful creations. You know what that creation is? That creation is you and me. My friends, we just need sometimes to be reminded. We need to remind ourselves to burn the hametz and the ego and not to worry about making mistakes, not to worry at all about anybody else, but our own self, our respect for ourselves, our children. Will they tell our stories like this man told me his? What will they say about you? That you built something in Kings Point? I mean, it's great. I love it. You should have the most unbelievable success. Provide for your family. But that should be the most important thing? Let me share with you. There was a man who came to me, a young man, at a singles event in the city. And he said, Rabbi, you know, you really need to speak to the girls. I said, I try not to do that. I'm married, even though I'm Sephardic. Technically, I'm allowed to marry more wives. We're barely able to deal with one. He says, no, you really need to speak to the girls. You know why? The girls expect us to have everything together. They expect us to have all the money, the job, the title, the everything. They expect it before they're willing to date us. You know, if they lowered their expectations a little, it would make it so much easier for us to be able to have the confidence to go ask them out. I said, wow, good point. I could see what's coming. At the end of the same evening, a girl comes up to me and she said, Rabbi, it's terrible. You know, these boys, they wait and wait and wait because they feel like they want to have everything set up. They want everything lined up. They want to already have. And now they're already this old. We're this old. Nobody's going out. You know what? What did their parents have when they got married? And what did their parents have when they got married? They came over from Iran. They had nothing. They made it work. It was okay. But the crazy thing is here's a man who wants to talk to a woman and a woman who wants to talk to a man. And neither one of them can make the first move because of what they think the other person is thinking. Is that not remarkable? So we give away what we want. My friends, I will ask you this question. The Haggadah says that those rabbis had to tell the story. You know why? Because rabbis have something special about them. Maybe not me, most rabbis. And you know what's special about rabbis? Their lives are dictated, hopefully, completely by the Torah. The stories they tell, they never change. That's what they turned to one another and said, it's true, we know it everything, we know it all. But who's going to tell the stories if not us? So my friends, this Haggadah and this year, start to think for yourself. What are the stories of your family? What is the identity of your children? What are you putting into those kids and those grandkids that is important, that is valuable, so that when they're in another room? I had in yeshiva 3 roommates, all 3 of them chain smokers. I never smoked a cigarette in my life. The funniest thing happened when the rabbi smelled my clothing, which stunk like smoke, and said, Shlomo, why are you smoking in yeshiva? And all the people around started laughing because everybody knew I'd never smoked anything in my life. And I was the one he was telling off. How do you do that? How do you become a person like that? That everyone around you is doing something and you know what you need to do and you never waver. And I have 2-word answer for you. The answer is Reebok pumps. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Back when I was a kid, I'm 47 now. Back when I was a kid, the coolest thing ever was a sneaker called Reebok pumps. It had a basketball, a soccer ball, a baseball in the front, and you could actually, you remember those? You could pump up the sneakers. Came home to my mom, I was like, Ma, I lived in a very rich city deal, right? My father was the rabbi. I said, Ma, I gotta get these Reebok pumps. I knew I shouldn't talk to my father. My father is like from Syria. He's like, sure, Dad. Like, that was not a conversation. I asked my mother, can I get them? Everybody has them. And my mother said, no, it's a ridiculous amount of money. It's just a gimmick. You don't need them. Just because everyone else is getting them doesn't mean you need to have Reebok pumps. I was so upset, but I had a plan. I waited till my Uncle David came over. He was like my guardian angel. He used to come in and spoil us rotten. He would buy us things. He would take us out to eat. I waited till he came. And he said, Shlomo, what can I get you for your birthday? And I said, Reebok pumps. He says, okay, good, no problem. I'm going to talk to your mother. I'm hiding upstairs in my house, looking between, the bars of the railing. So excited. And my uncle says to my mom, I'm going to take Shlomo for his birthday. We're going to buy him the Reebok pumps. My mom said, he's not getting the Reebok pumps. He says, no, I'll buy it for him as a birthday present. My mother said, he's not getting the Reebok pumps. I don't know if you can tell I'm still scarred. My mother was happy to buy me Reeboks and also a pump, but not Reebok pumps. I was so mad. And today, I'm so glad. My mother taught me, you don't do what other people do just because they do it. You don't become something other people become just because they become it. What do you want? What do you believe? What is important? What do you want your kids to have? And I'm proud to say that is what is going on with my children. And it brought tears to my eyes when we came to Manhattan. And in Manhattan, you have all the fancy schmancy people with all the fancy schmancy things. And my kids knew that just because they have Montclair or whatever doesn't mean that we have to have the same thing. My friends, that's generational wealth. But when you have people who live in a society like we do, where you're being bombarded all the time with messages, it's so hard to remember who you are. I want to share with you a story. There was a man, his name was Rabbi Galinsky, and he was held in one of the camps, in one of the barracks. And one night, in the middle of the night, he hears movement, and obviously they were trained to be fearful for survival, so they want to see what's going on. He wakes up, he looks over, he sees a man underneath. This guy, he's a Frenchman that was captured. He gets out of his bed, and he goes underneath his bed, and he takes out a little bag, and he pulls out of the bag a uniform. And it's a general uniform, like with all the bars on the side, all the decals and the thing, and he puts it on, and he puts on the hat, and he starts walking back and forth in the barracks in the middle of the night, and he's saluting. He thinks the guy must have lost his mind. He goes back in his bed. The next night, same thing. The next night, same thing. Only two people awake. This crazy guy and the rabbi. Until one day the rabbi says, hey, what are you doing? The guy gets so startled. He quickly takes off the hat and he throws it under his bed. He says, what are you doing? Nothing. He says, what are you doing? He says, shh, I'll tell you, just keep it down. He says, you know what my job here is in the camp? These Nazis, they have me shoveling feces, shoveling poop, pardon my expression. That's my job. This is my life. I have nothing. I have no food. I have no family. Everything's been taken from me. And I started to give up hope, he said. To think, is this my life? Is this worth living? And then I remembered that I still had my uniform hidden underneath the bunk from the first day I got here. So I put it on, and I started walking back and forth and reminding myself, I'm not a person who shovels excrement. I'm a general. People used to believe in me. People used to understand who I am, that I'm smart, that I'm capable. I gave orders. So every night I remind myself, when nobody's looking, who I really am. That's just not me now. But that's who I really am. My friend, this man was able to save his psyche from a pair of old clothes. And that's what I sang this song to you for. He asks the piano man to sing him a memory. When I wore a younger man's clothes. Who were we as a people? What haven't we seen? What haven't we conquered? Is there any difficulty that you can't overcome? Nothing is going to stop you. So why are you scared? What are you afraid of? I find that the biggest single problem in the dating world is that people are not confident enough to be themselves with other people. Because themselves is not someone anyone would ever want. My friends, remember you come from Abraham. Remember we've been and we've seen slavery and death camps. And if you're wondering or worried that you don't have enough money, your dad came to this country with nothing. And look at where you are now. Things will turn around. You're just not there yet. You'll be there. You'll get there. But relax. My friends, the rabbis who are attached to the unchanging values of the Torah are the people that can lead our community to that place. But only if they respect the rabbis. And that's not something that a rabbi can do for you. That is something that you do for yourself. My friends, I'll end with this. I believe that the entire story that we tell over this night is to communicate the power of thinking to ourselves what narratives we share in our homes. Eli Sharabi came for Shabbat dinner, and I had 5 young couples that were already coming over. And I called all of them before Shabbat. And I said, please do me a favor. I know you're going to want to ask him what it was like, and what did he think, and how was he? This is a man who said, I couldn't think of anything else, just give me a half a pita. He didn't care about the beatings. He was so hungry. That's the man who's sitting in front of you. Don't ask him anything. Just let him enjoy a beautiful, fun, happy Friday night dinner. Let's let him remember his old clothes. A man who emerges to find out that his wife and kids have been killed. But my friends, when a person has someone to remind him of that, and that is the job of a spouse, of a parent, of a friend, to remind the person who is what is so special about them, when they're capable of doing that, when you can give that to somebody, then you know what you do? You open a world of possibility for them. And a man could sit there at the Friday night table and actually enjoy himself and talk about how when he left Israel, Sharon, his brother, was his younger brother. But when he left and found out that his younger brother was campaigning for him, hadn't been home for the entire time he was away, traveled the world, got everyone to make sure that he would be let free, he says that when I emerged from Gaza, Sharon was my older brother. My friends, this is the power that we have over other people. But only if we choose to take our future into our own hands and to just not be bothered with anything else other than what we know is the right thing. I want to give you a beracha. My kids are going to argue with me on this one. My kids have learned that if we're walking in the street and I start singing, that they should not tell me to sing quieter because I'm embarrassing them. Because the only thing that does is make me sing louder, sometimes even kicking. I'm not doing that because it's a father's job to embarrass his teenagers. I'm doing that because I want my kids to feel, who the heck cares? What, that person that you're never going to see again, that means nothing, to look at you this way, who cares? Why is that even occupying your mind? We were built to be great, to be able to do things that everyone else said was impossible. You can only do that if you don't listen to whatever everybody else is saying. And you're not discouraged by what anyone else is saying. I got a postcard through my door, and I've been visited by 10 different cops over the last 2 days. Because the postcard addressed to the Edmund J. Safra Synagogue, attention, Rabbi Shlomo Farhi, said, oh wow, 400 Palestinians killed in one day by your IDF. You know what happened to Edmund Safra? Well, it's going to happen to you next, you greedy killing monsters. Signed with a heart. Handwritten, by the way. The police told me, listen, we know of at least 2 other synagogues that got postcards like this. Don't be worried. I looked at the police officer. There was 4 in my office. 1 from hate crimes, 2 from precinct 19, another one from internals. He says, don't be worried. I looked at him and I said, look at me. Do I look worried? My grandpa ran away from the Nazis. You think I'm afraid of a postcard? This is how we have to feel. Bulletproof. In everything. And when someone puts you down or someone says something negative about you, instead of letting it grow into a bregas, say, who cares? That's the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, where God has to convince a bunch of people, guys, I keep telling you, you're not really slaves. It was only what you were now. You were the sons of kings. So my friends, I will ask you that question and end tonight with those words. Everyone is looking at you and saying, man, what are you doing here? You were built to be amazing, to be strong, to be powerful, to stand up to those that are putting you down, or threatening your family, or threatening your people. Since October 7th, I've been on the streets of Manhattan, I don't know, thousands and thousands of times. I've not taken off my kippah once. Maybe that's why I'm getting postcards. But send more postcards. Am hanetzach lo mefached miderech aruka. So find yourself a rabbi who's attached to this unending, unyielding Torah. A Torah that was keeping Shabbat and kosher and family purity. And all of the laws of the Torah. We kept it in Egypt. We kept it in Iran and in Iraq and in Syria and in Russia and in Poland. And every place thought to themselves, the Christian church, the imams of Constantinople, they all believed that it was just a matter of time before they could shove the Jews in the ghetto long enough, beat the Jews long enough, make them dehemi long enough for them to abandon who they were and to believe that they were once again avadim. I have news for you. We've seen the movie already, and we know how it ends. That is who you are. I want to wish you the most powerful the most liberating, the most exciting night of the Seder, where you communicate to your children that they are indeed bulletproof. Thank you so much.